Today we're bringing one of Modern's most storied decks, 8-Rack, back to life with super secret tech in an effort to overthrow this overgrown vegetation, pawnshop fodder, a fake doctor, and this stupid guy who happens to look a lot like our super secret tech. What the f? This is dumb. It's a discard deck. Why haven't we been doing this the whole time? Anyway, we're going to try to overthrow these obnoxious cards with a more obnoxious 2-card combo of Grief and Welcome. Please choose your Undying spell. Thank you. Have a great day. Because until the reckoning comes, the combination is too good not to play. Ugh. So, who comes out on top today?
Evil or eviler?
The rack is back. Let's go. Opening 7, we're on the play, and we're leaning pretty hard on these sagas, but I think we'll keep it and give it a try. We'll lead on this Urborg into a Thoughtseize. Looks like we're playing against maybe Grixis Murktide. I think we're going to take this Preordain and try to slow them down. Opponent leads on their Scalding Tarn, passes the turn back to us. We draw another Thoughtseize, not terrible. We'll play our Saga, trigger, and we're going to Thoughtseize them. Opponent fetches, land tapped. I think we're going to take their Snapcaster. Opponent with a Polluted Delta, and back our way. Draw our third Urborg, not really what we're looking for here. We're going to play out our second Saga. Opponent fetches end of turn, Sunken Hollow tapped. They untap, Watery Grave tapped. End of turn, we'll create a Construct. Draw into another Thoughtseize. Pretty funny. We'll create another Construct, and I think we're going to get Pithing Needle. Name the One Ring. I'll play out a Mistress Factory. Move to combat. Opponent with a Fatal Push. Sure. Second main. We'll Thoughtseize. And we'll take one of these Murktides. Polluted Delta fetch from our opponent. Basic Island. Feels like a Murktide. Okay, One Ring. At least give themselves a turn. Back our way. We draw into a Wrench Mind. We're going to make another Construct. We'll search for a Rack. Play out a Swamp. And we'll pass it back. Rack's going to deal our opponent 1. Going down to 16 life. A second One Ring. Okay. Protection for another turn. Back our way. We draw into a Shieldred, which is pretty good. We're going to add 3 mana. Play out an Urborg. We'll keep the new one. Cast our Shieldred, pass turn back. Rack's going to deal them 1, draw a card, Shieldred will have them lose 2 life. Shieldred's Edict gets Shieldred. Feels like it shouldn't work. And a Murktide. But a 6/6 Murktide is too little too late as another Saga off the top continues to make my constructs bigger and bigger. An attack with a team putting them down to 2 and a final trigger off the rack puts them in their grave. We're up a game. Alright, we're going to board down on Funeral Charm, Fatal Pushes, Undying Malice, and Raven's Crime, bringing in Collective Brutality, Shieldred, Leylines, and another Voidwalker. Opponent begins the game with 7 cards. This hand is medium, but I think we'll keep. Polluted Delta fetch, Watery Grave Shock, and a Preordain. My opponent puts 1 top, 1 bottom with the Preordain. We draw into a second Mistress Factory, we'll play that out into our rack, and we'll pass the turn. Basic Island, nothing else, back our way. Drawn to Not Dead After All. I think we're going to play out our Castle Locthwain and just pass it back. Opponent with a Preordain, 1 top, 1 bottom, play out a land, back our way. We draw into our second Urborg. Don't really want to play these out. We'll play out a Mistress Factory and pass the turn. Opponent casts a Dress Down as the end of turn, draws a card. Dress Down goes to the graveyard, nothing else. We draw into a Pithing Needle. Let's play that out to start. See if there's a counterspell, and there is. Play out our Urborg and a Liliana. Force a negation from our opponent, discarding an Archmage's Charm. Opponent seems to be stuck on 3 lands. They pass the turn back. We draw into a Grief, which is excellent. I wonder if we just attack with a Mistress Factory, though? No, let's cast a Grief. Let's take a look at their hand. Grief is going to resolve. Triggers on the stack. I think we're going to take their Shieldred here, and I am going to fire off this Not Dead After All, anticipating a counterspell. Okay, so we're still getting 2 cards out of their hand. All of that was with the goal of resolving our Shieldred. They preordained to try to find an answer, a swing and a miss, but find a Shieldred of their own on the following turn and attempt to stabilize at 5 life. But it's futile as we prepare for an attack with a Voidwalker, Shieldred, and 2 Mistress Factories, which is more than enough to deal lethal damage. And our opponent scoops it up. We're 1-0. Match 2, we're going to jump right into Game 3, where we find ourselves on the draw on a mold of 5, locking horns with some Rhinos. After a back and forth first 2 games, it all comes down to this. Wooded Foothills fetch. Stomping Ground Shock, Suspend to Footfalls. Alright, we draw a second Grief. Second Grief makes things interesting. We'll cast Grief, Suspend, Dothi Voidwalker. Let's take a look at their hand. All they have is a Blood Moon. We'll take the Blood Moon, Not Dead After All, 2 Besagus, Mutavault, and a Misty Rainforest. Got it. Rhinos down to 3. Opponent with a Misty, back to us. Here we draw another black card. Move to combat, attack for 4. Opponent takes it. Let's cast another Grief. Opponent with a dead. We'll cast Not Dead After All. Opponent fetches in response, gets a Triome tapped. Grief is back. We know their hand. Rhino's down to 2. We need them not to top deck Rhinos here. Opponent with a Mutavault, back our way. Drawn to a Marsh Flats. We'll start with an attack. Swing for 8. And they drew into the violent outburst they needed. That's brutal. Here come the Footfalls. Double block one of the Griefs. We'll trade for a Rhino, deal them 1. They'll take 5 in total. We'll play out our Marsh Flats, pass the turn back. Rhino's down to 1. There's a Boseiju, we knew about that. Suspend another Footfalls. No attacks. Drawn to another Swamp. Play that out. And let's move to combat. We'll attack in for 4. Activate the Mutavault. Double block. We'll put the Rhino first. Opponent's down to 6 life. Rhino's coming off suspend. Questing Beast, pretty good. Alright, we're down to 16. Drawn to a Shieldred. I think we're just too little too late here. We're going to scoop it up. We're 1-1. And this is match 3. We're on the draw. 7 is mediocre, but I think it's a keep. Opponent's on 6-card hand. Start with a Slagwoods Bridge. Draw our second Liliana. And we're going to start on Mishra's Factory and pass the turn. This is likely blue, red, and soul artifact, so Liliana will likely be pretty good again in this matchup. Opponent with Scalding Tarn, back our way. Drew into a swamp, we'll play that out. Just pass it on back. Opponent fetches, Steam Vent's tapped. Opponent plays a Silver Bluff Bridge tapped. Into turn, I'll flash in a Bowmaster, ping them for 1, and it's getting Galvanic Blasted down. Notice opponent's leaving blue mana up, likely for a Spell Pierce. Play out another swamp, and we'll just tack in for 1. 4 mana into a 1 ring from our opponent. Shieldred will be nice against that. Nothing from our opponent. Drawn to a Marsh Flats, we'll play out an Urborg, play out our Shieldred. Opponent's drawing after our Shieldred resolves, they'll lose 2 life, down to 15. Opponent's down to 14 off the 1 ring trigger. They're going to go down to 12 off of Shieldred. They're going to draw 2 more, go down to 8 off of Shieldred, looking for an answer, and they don't find it. We're up a game. We're not going to board much. We're going to bring in Shieldred, Shieldred's Edict, and Shadow Spear. Board out Shrieking Affliction, Fatal Push, and Cling to Dust. Opponent keeps their 7, we'll keep our 7. Start with a land tapped. Drawn to a Voidwalker, we'll play out our Swamp, lead on Thoughtseize. We're going to get rid of the Rise and Shine, leave our opponent with Bolt, and 3 lands. Opponent plays out their Slagwood Bridge, it's going back our way. Drew into an Urza Saga, we'll play that out, pass turn back. Opponent with another land, and a turn we'll flash in our Bowmaster, hit them for 1. They bolt down the Bowmaster, they're at 19. Untap, draw Saga up to 2, play out our Urborg, move to combat, Kraken for 1. Opponent draws and does nothing. Make a Construct end of turn, untap, draw into a Liliana. I think we're going to make another Construct, and I think we're going to shut off the potential of the ring, so we're going to get a Pithing Needle here. We'll move to combat, attack for 4. There's the second bolt we knew about, hits down the Construct, opponent's going to take 1. They're at 17. Marsh Flats, pass it back. 4th land, Cleansing Wildfire. It's going to ramp our opponent and allow them to draw a card. They're up to 4 cards in hand. We drew Not Dead After All, which is pretty good. Lead on our Marsh Flats. We'll start with combat, swinging for 3. Opponent's down to 14. I think we're going to Grief here, discard the Voidwalker. Opponent fetches in response. Steam Vents tapped. Grief enters play. Galvanic Blast and Ensoul Artifact. We'll take the Galvanic Blast. Not Dead After All. Grief is coming back. Take the Ensoul Artifact. Second main, I'm going to play out a Liliana, but I'm not going to plus it just yet. And we're just going to pass turn back. Opponent has Island and Darksteel Citadel in hand. Play out the Citadel. 6 mana for an overloaded Arise and Shine. A bunch of 4/4s in play. It's kind of crazy. We draw into a second Liliana. We can make them sacrifice 2 of their creatures, but I think getting Shieldred into play is probably just better. So we'll minus Liliana, make them sacrifice a creature. Play out Shieldred, move to combat, and we'll attack for 7. Opponent's down to 6 life, we know they have a land in hand. They go down to 4 life off Shieldred, and they scoop it up. We're 2-1. Round 4, we won a die roll, let's jump in. 7's interesting, short on lands, but if we can find a second one, probably a pretty good hand. But with only 21 lands in the deck, I think that might be asking too much. We're going to mulligan. I like this 6 much better. We'll keep this. I think we're getting rid of the Grief. Opponent's also on a mulligan to 6. We're going to start with Marsh Flats. Fetch, Swamp, Thoughtseize. And it appears our opponent is doing the same as us, sort of. And I think we're going to get rid of the Not Dead After All. Opponent with a Bloodstained Mire, back our way. Draw into another Thoughtseize. Play out the Saga, trigger the Saga. I think we're just going to Thoughtseize them again. Opponent drew into a Bowmaster. I think we're going to take their Grief. Opponent fetches, end of turn. Blood Crypt tapped. Blackleaf Cliffs, back our way. Draw a second Saga, pretty good. We'll play that out, and we're just going to pass turn. Opponent flashes in their Bowmaster, puts us down to 14. Move to combat, swing for 2. We're going to take it, go down to 12 life. Play out another land. We didn't know about that one. End of turn, we're going to create a construct. Our opponent has another Bowmaster. They'll hit our construct down. Drew into a land. Excellent. Sagas are going to trigger, make a construct, and search out a copy of the rack, play an Urborg, and we'll Thoughtseize one more time. Take their Fury, pass turn back. Opponent to fetch end of turn. They're going to take 2 off the rack during the upkeep. Move to combat, swing for 2. We're going down to 8 life. Play out the Takenuma, and we draw into a Fatal Push. With that, I think we're just going to add a black mana here. Search out another copy of the rack. Cast a Bowmaster of our own. Trigger, hit their Bowmaster down. Shrieking Affliction. We'll swing for 3. Opponent jump blocks. 2 triggers from the rack, 1 from Shrieking Affliction. It's going to be a total of 7 damage. They're down to 9 life. Opponent with a Grief. Trigger. Hit our Fatal Push. No attack. Back our way. Draw into a Marsh Flats. We'll play that out. I don't know that we need to do anything. We'll just pass the turn. Opponent's going to take 7. Down 2 life. We're up a game. A lot of cards to bring in this matchup. We're pulling Thoughtseizes, Undying Malice, Wrench Mind, Pithing Needle, Shrieking Affliction, and Raven's Crine, bringing in Shieldred, Leylines, Dauthi Voidwalker, Shadow Spear, Fatal Push, Collective Brutality, and Shieldred's Edict. Game 2, our 7 looks pretty good. We'll keep it. Opponent's on a mulligan to 5. Keep their 5-card hand. Blood Crypt tapped. We draw Grief. Might be worth holding on to that one. We'll play out a Swamp and pass turn. Takenuma, and looks like a Scammed Fury. Discarding a Fable. Not dead after all. Fury's coming back. Drew a second Liliana. Really want to land. Play out our Factory. I think we're just going to pass it back. Moves to combat. Swings. Flash in our Bowmaster. Trigger. Hit them for 1. Jump block the Fury. Preserve our life. 2 mana. Opponent has a Bowmaster of their own. Figured this was a possibility. Kills our Bowmaster. Back our way. I think we're going to start this turn with a Grief. Discarding a Dauthi Voidwalker. I want to see what they're working with. They have a Grief of their own. We'll discard that. And we're going to Fatal Push the Bowmaster before they have a chance to reanimate it. We'll pass turn back. Opponent swings for 4, double strike. It's going to be 8 damage. Going down to 12. Second main, they have a Voidwalker. Pretty good. Untap. Draw into a Swamp. Play that out. Play out our Shieldred. Pass turn back. Shieldred triggers. They lose 2. My opponent moves to combat and swings for 3 only. Very unusual. And then just passes the turn back. We're going to gain 2 life. We draw into a Grief. And I think we're going to cast that out. Trigger the Grief. They have a Swamp in hand. And we'll just pass turn back. Opponent's going to lose 2 down to 15. Play out the Swamp. Combat. They'll swing for 8. We'll block with the Grief. Back our way. Draw a Cling to Dust. We'll gain 2 life. Play a Liliana. Minus Liliana targeting them. Sacrifice the Orc Army. We'll swing for 4. Put them down to 11. Opponent taps. Shieldred triggers. Puts them down to 9. Attack 3 at Liliana. 4 at me. Fury with double strike. Going to put me down to 5. Liliana's gone. Opponent with a second Voidwalker. In a turn, we're going to Cling to Dust and hit the Bowmaster. We're going to gain 3 life. Untap, draw, gain 2, activate the Factory, move to combat, swing for 6, opponent's down to 3 life. Untap, draw, they go down to 1. Opponent sacrifices a Dauthi, they play a Liliana of the Veil. They try to have me sacrifice a creature. I'm going to flash in a Bowmaster in response. I'm going to ping them for 1, and they had an out. I don't think they saw it though. They're dead. 3-1. Jumping into match 5. Unfortunately, we can't keep this. We'll mulligan. And our 6 still isn't great. I think we're going to mulligan down to 5. 5 is a keep, also not great. We're going to get rid of Swamp and a Fatal Push. Opponent with a Blood Crypt, Shock, Grief, exile a Bowmaster. See if we got a shot here. Nope, no shot. Our opponent follows up with a Bowmaster and a Ragavan, and we get run over. D-E-D, dead. Let's move on to game 2 with the same sideboard strategy we utilized last round. Take the play, and I think this is a keep. Opponent's on a mulligan of 5. We'll start with a basic Swamp and pass the turn. Opponent with a Verdant, back our way. Draw into a Saga, pretty good. I think we're just going to play that out, pass the turn back. Blackleaf Cliffs, fetch, Godless Shrine, Shock, nothing else, back our way. Saga up to 2, play out a Swamp, pass it back. Opponent with the Takenuma, and we'll activate our Saga. It's going to get Bowmastered down. We'll untap. Draw into a Fatal Push. Pretty good. We're going to activate our Saga. We'll make another construct. We're going to search our library. I think we're going to get a Shadow Spear here. Play out our Urborg, and we'll just pass it back. When it moves to combat, attacks for 2. We're going to block the Bowmaster here. I think they have an Undying spell. Okay. Not dead after all. Bowmaster dies. We'll Cling to Dust. Opponent's going to flash in another Bowmaster, I think. Okay, Wear Tear. We gain 3 life. We're up to 22. We draw a Bowmaster of our own. Opponent has 3 cards in hand. I think we're going to play out this Hagra Mauling as a land, and we're going to play out this Shrieking Affliction, leaving up our Bowmasters. Opponent with 3 mana for a Fable. Interesting they did that pre-combat. Attack, flash in our Bowmaster. We'll hit the Orc Army. Back our way. Draw Not Dead After All, which is pretty good. Let's start with the Voidwalker here. Grief, exile a Fatal Push. Grief, Fury, Undying Evil. We're definitely taking the Fury. Not Dead After All. Bring Grief back. And we're going to take their Grief as well. Pass back their way. Shrieking Afflictions can deal them 3. They're going down to 14. When it discards a card, we'll ping them for 1. They discard Undying Evil. Attack for 2. Make a Treasure. And we'll chump block. 4 mana for Shieldred. Pretty good. Pretty good. We'll take 2. We're going to move to combat and attack for 5. Opponent takes it. We'll sacrifice our Voidwalker. I'm going to get another Grief. We'll cast the Grief. Discard their Grief. Fatal Push the Shieldred. Shrieking Affliction is going to deal 3, and they scoop it up. We're on to game 3. And I accidentally submitted a 64 card deck. Hopefully we don't get punished for that. 7 looks like a keep. Opponent with Blood Crypt Shock. Probably getting scammed. There's a Grief. Opponent takes our Fatal Push. Not Dead After All. Takes our Shieldred. Draw Thoughtseize. Not terrible. We'll Thoughtseize, take a look at what they're working with. Pretty good hand. No lands though. I think we're going to take the Lightning Bolt. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Plays EE for 0. Attacks for 4. We draw into a Marsh Flats. We'll play out our Urza Saga. Get that online. Opponent's turn. Grief attacks. We're down to 10 life. Saga up to 2. Play out our Swamp. Pass the turn. Attack for 4. Puts us down to 6 life. And a turn we'll make a Construct. Untap. We draw into a Mishra's Factory, which is actually really good. We're going to add a mana here. We're going to get ourselves a Shadow Spear. We're going to play out the Factory, equip the Shadow Spear, move to combat, swing for 3, and play out a Voidwalker. Opponent attacks for 4. It's going to put us down to 5 life. Nothing else back our way. Drawn to a Marsh Flats. Let's play that. Shrieking Affliction, activate our Factory, move to combat, attack with the team. Opponent down to 6 life. Play out Attack Enuma, and nothing else. Back our way, we untap. Drawn to a Liliana. We're going to play out our Urborg, and we're going to move the Shadow Spear over the Voidwalker. Move to combat, attack with the team. Opponent blocks with the Grief, down to 2 life. 3. We're going to play out our Liliana. We're going to have each player discard a card. Opponent discards a Grief, and they scoop it up. A 4-1 for the rack.
And just like that, 8-Rack is back with the help of our super secret tech for the time being. Hope you've enjoyed today's video. I will see you again very soon. You know the deal, everybody. Be well.